so very excited to be checking in. This is my weekly checkpoint to just check in and make connection with everyone and just continue to energize you to really think about your next steps, especially if you are at a crossroads in your life, in your career, and in your business. And today, when I woke up, I was really thinking a lot about people who are really at that point where they recognize amongst all of this chaos that they are being called to higher, that they're being called to greater, and they're starting to recognize that their corporate job is no longer serving them. You see, one of the things that happens when things start going crazy is we begin to look in the mirror and we begin to take things in. We start asking ourselves really hard questions. And if we're honest with ourselves, we will begin to recognize the necessity to make pivots and shifts in a way that really resonate with us. And so I imagine with everything going on in challenging the status quo, there's a big disruption that is happening. But I imagine that you are beginning to assess for yourself, what do you need? What do you want? And how do you want to spend the next years of your time, your effort, and your energy? And I think that that is a great question to ask. I think it is one that is very bold. I think it is one that deserves a priority for you. But I also think it is one that you have to be courageous in answering honestly. What do you want now? What do you feel like you're being drawn to do? And as I pondered that question for myself this morning, and I took myself back to when I was in those corporate spaces, I remember hitting the point where my corporate job no longer served me. And what I mean by that is it just did not continue to resonate with me. It did not align with the things that I valued and the things that I wanted. And it left me in the middle trying to figure out what direction or what path to go. And so I wanted to just kind of show up and offer you some guidance and some insight if you truly are at the position where you feel like your corporate job is no longer serving you. And here are a few indications. Here are a few indications that a change may be necessary. Here are a few things that may resonate with you and really help you to understand what might be going on. The first is if you're starting to feel stifled from a creative standpoint, if you're starting to feel stifled from a growth standpoint, sometimes that is a really big indicator that you are no longer aligned with the environment. So let me say that again. One of the things that could be indicating strongly for you that change is needed is you feel stifled. Your creativity is stifled. You feel stifled in your opportunity for growth. And that allows you to begin to recognize that something is no longer fitting. And when you are in a corporate role, and you feel confined in those ways, you feel like you're confined by rigid processes, you even feel like you're confined by bureaucracy and some political dynamics that are happening within the corporate politics realm, when you begin to sense those limitations weighing heavy on your ability to be creative, your ability to innovate, your ability to think outside of the box, and in some cases, your ability to even have your own identity, that's when you know there is a signal for change. Something needs to pivot. Something needs to adjust. When your creativity is stifled, your natural talents and your unique ideas are not able to flourish. And when we put a lid on the things that spring up as life for us, it often leads to frustration and stagnation. So one of the things that could begin letting you know that your corporate role is no longer serving you is if you feel stifled from a creativity standpoint, or you feel stifled from growth and opportunity. The thrill is gone. You're going through the motions and you're becoming indifferent. And the problem with being indifferent is you don't care if it does and you don't care if it doesn't. And that is not a good place to be. That indifference begins to weigh on you. And so, one of the things you have to do is you have to begin to take responsibility and control for yourself in those instances. If you are starting to sense that your corporate role is no longer serving you because you feel stifled. The second thing that can be an indicator that your corporate role is no longer serving you is there's a misalignment with your core values. And there's a lot of that happening right now. A misalignment with your core values, where your work should resonate with who you are to your core. You're finding that the atmosphere, the place, you're finding all of these indicators are saying to you that my values are not prioritized here. And in that case, your corporate role could no longer be serving you because of that misalignment. And if you find yourself in that position, you got to keep eye out for you. We are finding in this dynamic and in this climate that there are powers that be that are keeping eye out for themselves. And you've got to protect the health and wealth of you in these circumstances if corporate environments are no longer aligned with your core values. When you find that your daily tasks or the company culture no longer reflect your personal values or your purpose, it creates this internal disconnect that is relentless. And it begins to weigh heavy on you. You feel disconnected. You have a loss of energy. You're not burned out. You're just disinterested. And there are different indicators for burnout. But in this particular case, you're not burned out. You're disinterested. And that's where you used to be all in. You find yourself pulling back. You may be in a position where your corporate job is no longer serving you. So we've talked about two factors so far. The first one is you're stifled in your creativity, you're stifled in your growth. The second indicator is there's a misalignment with your core values. And finally, the third indicator is a lack of autonomy and ownership. As your career progresses, you want to be guided less and given more responsibility. And oftentimes, corporate roles come with limited decision-making power. And this means you are not fully in control of your work or its impact. And when you have a desire to be more, grow up more, show more, impact more, and it's being stifled because of the environment that you're in, it's misaligned, it's disconnect, and this could be an indicator that your corporate job is no longer serving you. The lack of autonomy can prevent you from taking ownership of your ideas and seeing them evolve into meaningful solutions. You feel held back from reaching your full potential. And when this happens again, you don't feel empowered, though you have a desire to be empowered. You want to have license, you want to have say, you want to feel like you are in a position to call for more, to do more. You want to have more impact on what's happening, but there's a disconnect because the environment that you're in is not allowing you to flourish in that way. So when you have this disconnect with your corporate job, or when you find the corporate job is no longer serving you, it does not mean you're not making good money. You absolutely still can be making good money and your corporate job no longer serve you. It doesn't mean your performance has fallen off. You can still be performing very well in your corporate job, not serve you. So it's not that things are indicated to be going wrong. It's an internal feeling that you have that this place is not a good fit for me anymore. Now, I have talked many times before that I am not a fan of jumping. I am a very big fan of being strategic with our pivots and coming up with strategies that will allow us to move in a way that does not put everything at risk. When I think about my own story, I spent over 30 years climbing that corporate ladder. I spent time navigating those high pressure roles at some amazing companies. I spent time delivering results, and that allowed me to experience a degree of lifestyle comfort and financial security. So jumping would put everything at risk. What needs to happen in this particular case is you've got to really feel or identify what you've been called to do to bring fulfillment in your life. Fulfillment is the key, and that's what's missing because there's the misalignment with what's happening in your corporate job. For me, I had an inner voice that kept pushing me to make a bold transition. It didn't just come overnight. It allowed me to see vision about what I could accomplish and do. It allowed me to understand that purpose was going to connect me with the fulfillment that I was desiring. And it really positioned me to take my impact and message and put it into a business that would change my life forever. My business started in 2019. My pivot started in 2020. And by 2022, I was able to exit out and do what I do now full time. So, what I am not advocating, and please hear me loud and clear, is that you go in tomorrow and throw in the towel. But what I am advocating is that you really begin to think about the pivot plan that's going to have you exit in a way that does not put everything at risk. When you start to sense that that corporate job is no longer serving you, that is your call to action to begin putting things in place for your next. That is your call to action to begin making moves for your next. It does not mean throw everything away. So when you're faced with these scenarios of the job not serving you anymore, that is your signal to begin to look for fulfillment, to look for favor, to look for opportunity that resonates with you. But believe me, I understand that fear sets in when you think about leaving behind that steady 6-figure paycheck. You can be overwhelmed by it. But even though you think of leaving and you think of all the uncertainty, it does not let up that you're disconnected where you are. And if you don't honor yourself, if you hang on in a situation and you don't honor yourself by beginning to come up with a strategy and plan for your next move, you are going to become unhealthy, unhappy, and unhelpful. The answer to that lies in your purpose. The answer to your shift, the answer to your fulfillment lies in you giving into the fact that you're being called to do more. And this is the season that nudge is a nudge to begin doing the things that you know you are called to do. This is the understanding that you begin to realize that you have been chosen to accomplish something amazing. And when you do that, it's going to resonate with you. What I find about embracing this entrepreneurial path is that you will unlock true capabilities for yourself. You're going to discover your power in ways that you never knew. You're going to get a high sense of release. You're going to feel empowered. You're going to feel necessary, and you're going to feel strong. And all of those things are the opposite of what you feel when your job is no longer serving you. When you're going through the motions and you're just showing up and you're just going through accomplishing the things on autopilot and not allowing yourself to want or desire something from it anymore. And so what I really want to encourage you to do is to begin thinking about what action do I need to take right now to prepare for my next. It's not going to happen overnight, But if I don't start today, it won't happen at all. Beginning to pivot and beginning to pivot in a way that really highlights and shines a light on your brilliance is the absolute move that's going to bring security in the way that you're used to. And what I want to offer to you is that you can make that pivot from corporate to entrepreneur. And when you do that with a purpose driven business, you'll be able to reclaim your creativity. You'll be able to align your work with your values, and you'll gain the autonomy to build something extraordinary. And that is where fulfillment lies. So the disconnect you feel, the disconnect that feels like a stifling of you, the disconnect that feels like a misalignment with your core values, the disconnect that feels like a lack of autonomy and ownership. When you step into entrepreneurship, when you begin to make that pivot from corporate to entrepreneur in a very strategic way, you'll get it all back. You will regain fulfillment. Now, over the last 5 days, I have been posting on social media and I have been talking about deliberate aspects of what that journey looks like. I've been sharing from my own experience. I talked about embracing the leap. I've talked about redefining your identity. I talked about imagining true freedom. I talked about purpose fueling your fulfillment. And I also, at the end of that 5 day journey, talked about getting the support that you deserve. That's really key. You see, one of the things that we make a big mistake around is thinking that we'll figure things out on our own, when really it is the investment in yourself and your potential business idea that you have been given that is going to accelerate your success. That investment will be a game changer. I spent today talking with my clients, with my private clients. I had an incredible day of conversations, and they are all at different places on the spectrum in their journey to building the empire that God has called them to build. They have such smiles across their faces because the work that they're doing resonates with them. They have put themselves in the driver's seat of being able to have the impact that's going to make a difference. That's what I want for you, especially if you are in the position where your corporate job is no longer serving you. I want to invite you to do more than just look for another job. I want to invite you to step into entrepreneurship and begin to understand how enterprisingly resourceful you can be. In this season, we are learning it's not just about do you have a job? It's are you creating jobs? And I want to encourage you to lean into that. Woo, I got to sneeze. I want to encourage you to lean into that. It's not about just being enterprising. It's not about just being employed. Sorry, I got the sneeze on my head. It's not just about being employed. It's about being enterprising. And being enterprising means that you can move into a space where you are the hirer, where you are the one who are creating job opportunities for others and not just looking to hire on behalf of somebody else, but behalf of the company that you build. That's where we need to be. And so I want to invite you. All week I have offered the opportunity for you to get on my calendar and for us to have a conversation about where you are in your corporate journey and your desire to step into entrepreneurship. All of these conversations are absolutely free. You'll be talking directly with me. I will ask you a few questions to understand where you are, and I will give you my professional recommendation or my professional thoughts on what your best next steps are. And so I want to extend that opportunity to you. Let me put the link up here so that you'll know where to book that call. If you go to www.callwithdenise.live, I think there are a few slots left over the course of the weekend. I have some travel coming up, and so my calendar is going to get pretty tough. And so I wanted to make these calls available before I started on on my travels. And so if you'll go to my calendar, hopefully there's a few spots there that we can still have a call yet this month. If you go to www.callwithdenise.live, my information is there, and I will look forward to hearing from you and talking about your pivot from corporate to entrepreneur. So it was great checking in. Have a good evening.